presenting to you a sermon titled Jesus Valued the Outcast. My scripture that I'll be using will be Mark chapter 5, verse 25 to verse 30 and verse 34. If you've been walking with Jesus for some time, you know it is often easy to become numb to the fact that Jesus' message and ministry were actually very controversial. While he was on earth, he made enemies with both government officials and religious leaders alike. And this is due to the fact that he treated the untouchables of society so well. Today I want to speak to you from the message, Jesus Values the Outcast. I want you guys all to imagine how life would be if you couldn't give or receive physical touch. I'm talking no high fives, no hugs, not even a pinky promise. We actually read in Mark about a woman who lived just like this. You see, in Jesus' time, people lived by strict religious codes where they made emphasis on keeping people pure before God. So if anyone had a disease, ate the wrong kind of food, or even touched something gross, they were considered unclean, and able to worship God in public and unable to make physical contact with others for fear that they too would be considered unclean. This is where the story of the woman begins. A woman would be considered temporarily unclean every time she menstruated. This meant that for a whole week, every single month, a woman wore the label unclean. Can you imagine that? I mean, every Jewish woman at that time endured this every single month. For a quarter of their lifetime, they were considered unclean. But then there was the woman of Mark. She didn't only deal with this for a quarter of her lifetime. She had a medical condition, meaning that she was considered unclean all the time. And right now, I'm just trying to imagine how hard that must have been for her. She must have felt isolated and lonely. Can you imagine living a life where you're treated like an outcast for something you can't even control, like your skin color, your gender, even wearing glasses or having a peanut allergy? You see, in Mark chapter 5, verse 25 through verse 30 and verse 34, the scripture reads, "There among the people was a woman who had been bleeding for the past 12 years. Many doctors had tried to help her, and all the money she had was spent, but she was not improving. In fact, her sickness was getting worse. The woman heard about Jesus, so she followed him. And with other people, she went and touched his coat. She thought, if I can just touch his clothes, that will be enough to heal me. As soon as she touched his coat, her bleeding stopped. Immediately, Jesus felt power go out from him, so he stopped and turned around. Who touched my clothes, he asked. He said to her, dear woman, you are made well because you believed. Go in peace. You will not suffer anymore. Right there, in front of the large and busy crowd, Jesus stooped down, engaged this hurt, lonely, outcast woman, and healed her. After all this time of feeling isolated and being hurt, Jesus healed this woman of not only her physical illness, but Jesus also gave her complete healing. Jesus gave her peace. After all, Jesus could have gone about and healed her without ever acknowledging her. He could have healed her quietly and went about his day. But Jesus understood her wounds weren't just physical. By drawing everyone's attention to this woman, I believe that Jesus was trying to make one important statement. You matter. I believe Jesus wanted her to know that she was loved, valued, and chosen. I think he needed her to see that, sick or not, she was worth seeing, worth knowing, and worthy of his time and attention. It was moments like this that made Jesus' life and ministry so different. Sure, his physical healings were impressive, but it was his radical love for the untouchables that really mattered. He wasn't just in the business of healing bodies, but he also cared about healing souls and hearts too. Today, we see Jesus love the untouchable in a special way. Jesus valued the outcast, and he's calling you to do the same. Thank you.